Hi and welcome back to Ask DRTK. And today I'm continuing my look at small diaphragm pencil condenser microphones. It's the MXL 606, so let's check it out. Now the MXL 606 is a popular microphone for instrument miking, especially percussive instruments like drums. And with built-in attenuation of -20 and roll-off at 150, the snare drum is actually a popular choice. So in my review, first we'll turn back the clock. I'll unbox this microphone for you just so you can see what that's like. I'll go through the specs, and then we'll get into some audio tests. And all of the audio in this review will be without processing unless it tells you otherwise in the lower third, so keep checking that out. So first we'll start out with unprocessed audio tests on the MXL 606. We'll use the Focusrite Scarlett 8i6. We'll also test it through preamp only on the ART voice channel and the DBX286. Again, no processing on those channel strips. Then we'll do some comparisons to a few other popular small diaphragm condenser microphones, as well as a couple of other mics that I think might be a good fit for this application. Then we'll go ahead and do some physical tests on the mic. So we'll test some plosives out, handling noise, a few things that may be important for your application. And finally, we'll do some processed audio demonstrations. And I'll do both plug-in as well as hardware processing chains, just to give you an idea of what you can do with the 606. And so far, you've been listening to me on the MXL 606 directly into the Focusrite Scarlett 8i6. I have the gain set at about 1130, no processing applied to the mic, and this is kind of the audio you're going to get out of it. In terms of working distance on a microphone like this, being a small diaphragm, if I get really close to it, I have to be very careful in terms of plosives. It's not going to be really good for an application with dialogue at a very close distance. Right now, I'm actually at about 6 inches off the mic, and I have it just across axis to try and cut down on the plosives, and hopefully that's helping out. It is from my monitoring anyways. And you can get further back. This is the kind of microphone that you actually can mic at a distance. A lot of people will use it for overheads on drum kits. I'm going to test it in a boom application later on for dialogue in this review. But this is kind of the sound you get. If you move back really far, you'll pick up more room noise. That's to be expected. If I get back here at about a foot, this is the sound you're going to get. And I'll back up to about 2 feet on it. And so 2 feet in this room, this is kind of the sound you get. And as you can see, the room that I'm in has some treatment around it. Treatment on the walls, nothing on the ceiling here. So there certainly is some life to this room. It's not really completely dead. But it's a good test for indoor boom mic, certainly with this particular microphone. But also these condensers do tend to pick up a little bit from the room, even at this close mic situation. But I think it's a good environment for testing this mic on a boom just above my head. So as I said, rolling back the clock here, we'll unbox the MXL 606. Comes in a nice quality box here. It's, sort of a consumer packaging, some images on it. Inside, we get a few things. MXL always includes a nice cleaning cloth, so that's really nice to get. Some instructions here, a little bit of details on this microphone, as well as a few others MXL has to offer. And this mic comes actually in a nice little protective metal case. So that's something that's useful, especially these small mics. They can easily get lost. So having the cases there. Inside, we get some foam. There's a microphone clip, of course. It's plastic as, usual as we'd expect. We also get the microphone itself. It's wrapped nicely in plastic with desiccant. One thing about MXL, they're very sensitive to moisture damage in terms of the microphone. At least the company is, not necessarily the microphones any more than anyone else. But it does protect it and make sure that it gets to you in 100% condition. So really nice to see that. Seems to be well constructed. We have, attenuation and roll-off switch. So now we'll go ahead and look at the specs. This is a pressure gradient condenser microphone, so small diaphragm, 22 millimeter size. So again, a little bit larger than most pencil microphones. It's gold sputtered capsule. And it's a cardioid pickup pattern with a sensitivity of 15 millivolts. It has an impedance of 150 ohms. It has an equivalent noise of 17 dB, and that's A-weighted again through the vocal range. Signal-to-noise ratio of 77 dB, again A-weighted, with a max SPL of 137 dB. Requires 48 volts phantom power, comes in at a very lightweight 113 grams, and is affordable at under $100 at the time of recording. So now I've connected the MXL 606 back up to the Scarlett 8i6, again with no processing. And before we get into the microphone comparisons, let's just do a few physical tests. We'll start out with plosives. People, because. And definitely getting plosives there. No question with a small diaphragm condenser, we're going to get that. Let's try a pop filter. People, because. And yeah, that definitely cleaned it up. And again, that's why I have the microphone at a cross axis here, so I'm not speaking directly into it, just to keep that from happening as much as possible. Now I'll go ahead and look at the off-axis rejection. And so when I'm starting out here looking right at the microphone, again, trying to be careful not to have plosives. Now I've turned it to 90 degrees, and this is kind of the sound you're going to get out of it. We'll go around back to 180 degrees, and so that's the sound you're going to get. It's rejecting pretty well there. And finally, at the other 90-degree position, that's the sound. And this microphone is a cardioid pickup pattern, so again, I'd expect that pickup in front of the mic with very little in behind, and from what I can tell in the monitoring, that's pretty reasonable for this. Now we'll do just a quick test with some keyboard rejection. So I'm typing on a keyboard, and you can hear how much of that it's picking up in the background while I'm talking. And that's going to be important if you're using this for streaming, anywhere where you're going to be making quite a bit of noise in the background. So seems to work pretty well with that. Now in terms of handling noise, you'd have to be pretty careful with this microphone. Tapping on it, you can hear it's picking up all of that sound as I'm doing this. It's really not meant for a hand boom application. You could boom this up again over a drum kit. It'd be just fine. We'll try it out over dialogue later on, just above me again. But typically this is not meant to be handled while it's being used. Okay, and now you're listening to me on the MXL 606 through the ART voice channels preamp. And what I've done is I've patched in from the preamp directly into a line in on the 8i6. So I bypassed all of the processing on the ART. And so what you're getting here is a tube preamp, and that tube is giving a little bit of saturation to the sound. I wanted you to hear what it was like through a different preamp other than the very, very clean preamps you typically get on an audio interface like the 8i6. And now you're listening to the MXL 606 through the DBX286S preamp. I have the bypass engaged, so we're not getting any of the processing happening there. I don't have phantom power on in the DBX because it's actually being supplied through the ART voice channel. I have a mic splitter and wired in with the patch bay here, so it's getting the power through there. But this is the preamp only on the DBX. And so the 606 from MXL has a little bit of different sound with this type of preamp. Wanted you to have a chance to hear that as well. And before I start the microphone comparisons, I just wanted to let you hear what this sounds like with the 150 hertz roll-off applied. So I've moved that switch on now. And again, not probably the best application for dialogue. In my opinion, there's some useful information for dialogue below 150 hertz. But if you were miking up a snare drum and you wanted to reduce bleed from the kick, this could be a good use for that feature on the mic. Now we'll get into a few microphone comparisons. First, I'm going to compare the 606 against the AT2021 from Audio Technica. Right now, you're hearing me on the MXL 606, again, directly into the Focusrite Scarlett 8i6. I have the gain set at 1130, no processing here. This is the sound you've been hearing so far in the video. Now let's take a listen to the AT2021. And now I switched over to the Audio Technica AT2021. You can see I have it mic'd up in a similar fashion, kind of a cross axis at about 6 inches working distance right now. It is connected to the 8i6. I have the gain here at 1230, so the Audio Technica needs a little more gain than the MXL 606 does. This is what the sound is like, no processing again. Both microphones, kind of similar applications, boom applications, miking of instruments, percussive instruments in particular, but can be used for vocals. And now we'll go ahead and see if you can tell which microphone I'm on. Check the upper corner to find out. And this time we'll compare the MXL 606 against the AKG P170. Starting out here, of course, on the 606, still into the Focusrite 8i6, gain at 1130, no processing. This is the sound, again, you've been hearing for most of this video. Now we'll go ahead and listen on the P170. Okay, and now you're listening to me on the AKG P170. I have it set up about the same as the 606, so off axis here, kind of across my mouth. Gain set at 1130 on the Scarlett, no processing. This microphone, again, is about the same gain as the 606. It has a similar working characteristic, I can say, in terms of distance. Definitely different in terms of clarity from my monitoring. You can tell me below what you think. But this is another very popular microphone, used for a lot of instrument miking. Can be used for percussive instruments, but definitely gets a lot of attention on acoustic instruments as well. Can be used for vocals, boom application. I've tested this out, and the performance is really good on the AKG P170. And so now we'll go ahead and see if you can tell the difference between the two mics. And so can you tell the difference? Can you tell the 606? Is it the P170? What am I talking on here? Check the upper corner to find out. Okay, this time we'll compare the MXL 606 against the Samson CO2, another popular small diaphragm condenser pencil microphone. And of course, starting out here on the 606 into the Scarlett 8i6 gain at 1130, no processing. So, I mean, this is kind of the baseline that we're using for all the unprocessed audio in this review. Now I'll go ahead and switch over to the CO2 and let you hear that. And now I switched over to the Samson CO2. I have it into the Scarlett 8i6. Gain is probably about 1145, just a little higher than the 606, but really close. No processing again. This is the sound you get out of this microphone. Really popular again for boom applications, drums in particular, but also used on other instruments. Definitely can be used for dialogue. So let's see if you can tell the difference between these two mics. And after hearing both microphones, can you tell the difference between the MXL 606 and the Samson CO2? Check out the upper corner to find out. This time I'll compare the MXL 606 against the Sennheiser XS1, a dynamic handheld microphone, so a little different type of microphone here, but has a lot of similar characteristics in terms of a brighter tone, something you don't often get in a dynamic mic. So of course, starting out here again on the MXL 606, nothing has changed. Gain still at 1130 with unprocessed audio here. Now we'll switch over to the Sennheiser. This is what the Sennheiser XS1 sounds like. I'm using a similar working distance here. I've set it up at 6 inches off axis. Normally a microphone like this you could be a little bit closer up on, but I wanted to have kind of a similar distance for this comparison. This one's connected into the Scarlett 8i6. Here I have the gain set at about 315, so as a dynamic mic, of course, I would expect this one to need more gain. Of course, no phantom power in this case. This is what the microphone sounds like. Now we'll see if you can tell the difference between the Sennheiser and the MXL. And after listening to both microphones, can you tell the difference? Am I talking on the 606 or the XS1? Check the upper corner to find out. And for the last comparison, I thought we'd look at the MXL 606 versus the Audio-Technica AT2020. A really standard microphone. So many people use the AT2020. I thought it'd be a good one to include here. Now, first we're on the 606 and nothing has changed. You can see from the lower thirds. So this is kind of, again, the standard you've been hearing for audio throughout this review. Now I'll go ahead and switch over to the AT2020. All right, and finally I'm on the Audio-Technica AT2020. I have this directly into the Scarlett 8i6 here. Gain is right about noon, so just a little more gain than on the 606. This is, again, a really popular large diaphragm condenser. Thought I'd throw it into the mix here so you can compare it against the MXL pencil mic. And so this is what it sounds like. Now let's go ahead and see if you can tell the difference. And one last time, after hearing both microphones, can you tell which one I'm on? Am I on the AT2020 or are you hearing me through the MXL 606? Let me know if you could tell the difference in the comments below between any of the comparisons in these mics. I'm really interested to hear in how well it comes across on YouTube to your ears. And because I've been testing out small diaphragm pencil condenser microphones for boom application, I've gone ahead and thrown the MXL 606 right up here. It's about 18 inches from my mouth, just out of frame. This is what it sounds. Definitely I can hear in my monitoring, it's picking up a lot more life in the room. This microphone actually, compared to many others I've heard, is picking up quite a bit of room sound. So that may be what you're going for. So I wanted you to be able to hear this in a boom application. Typically for me, for dialogue, I'd like to get a little less than this, but in any case, this is the boom application here with the MXL 606. Now I'll go ahead and try some processed audio with this microphone. Again, I'll bring it up on the boom close to my mouth, and we'll start out with in the box. So we'll plug this back into the 8i6 and get some plugins going. And now you're listening to me on the MXL 606 with some in-the-box processing applied. So I have a couple of plugins going on here. We're still connected into the Scarlett 8i6. Gain hasn't changed. Only thing I've done is add some plugins. So let's check this out. And I'm trying to keep the processing very natural here in the box. So what I'm doing is using Neutron 3 from iZotope as well as the RX de-esser. And so the equalizer, as you can see, I've got a little bit of boost in the low end here, cutting out a few resonances, a little bit for sibilance here as well, and to control some nasally sound. Fairly basic there. Compression, I've gone ahead and set the threshold here around 11, 4:1, and with a fairly fast attack and release. This is a 100% wet mix here, so it's all processed on the compressor. And just again, moderately controlling the dynamics. You can see The orange line isn't really moving a whole lot here. I'm not really going above that threshold very much. And finally, the de-esser here, I'm using the spectral de-esser, and I've applied a moderate de-essing above 4,500 hertz. So not below that, trying to make sure that the clarity of my voice is still there. So this is in the box processing. You can use this with whatever DAW you like, or you can also apply this through OBS Studio. It's really simple. Again, here using the 8i6, and so the process sound in the box. And now we'll try out some processing here with some outboard gear. So we're on the ART voice channel. Again, have it coming in here. Gain is set probably just about 1030. Doing some compression here, about 3:1 roughly. A little bit of de-essing as well. Some boost in the bass and some cut in the mid area just to control the boxiness going on here. I've also engaged here the EQP-KT, which is a Pultec style EQ. A little bit of a bass boost and cut going on, as well as a high boost and cut. So just to kind of polish the tone a little bit. This is through a, again, hardware chain. This is processing on the MXL 606. Okay, and now you're listening to the MXL 606 through the DBX 286. I have the gain set at about 10 o'clock here. As you see, I'm getting good signal. No phantom power on here because the microphone's getting phantom power actually from the ART. That's just because of the way I have my patch bay and mic splitters set up. So just to isolate the two, but I'm getting the power from the ART. In any case, we have the compressor going on here. I've got the drive up a little bit. You see I'm getting some attenuation of the signal. Obviously a little bit of de-essing going on, some low enhancement and high enhancement, as well as a little bit of the expander here to just clean things up. This time for a little bit of variety, I've gone ahead and turned on the sonic exciter. And this, you may be familiar with the effects from like an Aphex exciter, Aphex channel strips. We've got the low end and the high end here. So this is kind of like the big bottom. As I turn it up here, you're going to get a lot more bass coming through. I'll back it off again to a little more reasonable level. A little bit of high enhancement as well here. Just from variety again here, so you can hear the 606 on a few different processing chains. And now I've moved the MXL 606 back into the Scarlett 8i6. Again, direct with no processing here, gain set at 1130. And this microphone, again, is a fairly versatile microphone. It's affordable. It's under $100 US. And so you can use it in a variety of applications. For me, it wasn't my first choice in terms of a boom for dialogue. It has just a little too much presence that it picks up from the room. But perhaps on a percussive instrument like snare, would be a nice sound to pick up a little bit of that reverberation. And so you may want to try it on that. For dialogue close mic like this, it gets the job done. Certainly not the most purpose-built microphone for that, but the sound is reasonable to my ear. Again, there were some better choices, I think, in the comparisons. You can let me know below. But in any case, affordable, gets the job done. And this review, of course, is part of my series where I'm looking at small diaphragm condenser pencil microphones for boom dialogue. And for me, I don't think it's going to fit that application. I think this would be better suited to situations where maybe recording an instrument, we want to pick up a little bit of that reverberation in the room. And so if you're like me and you're interested in microphones, outboard gear, in-the-box processing, streaming, recording, check out one of the videos on the screen. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.